Right. Good evening, members, officers, members of the public, and welcome to the first planning meeting of this new administration. Before we start, we got some new members here. Can we introduce ourselves? I'm Councillor Pritam Garewal from Hounslow Central and Chair of the Planning Committee.
Hi, I'm Mike Kiley. I'm your interim head of planning.
Hello, I'm Eamon Cassidy. I'm one of the area planning managers in development management.
Hi, I'm Sophie Middleton. I'm one of the planning officers.
Hi, I'm Gillian Riddler. I'm also one of the planning officers.
Councillor Gurmail Singh Lal.
Councillor Bowring, Sana Brentford Lock.
Councillor Fawn Rahman, Hounslow Heath.
Tony Lukey, Oswald Grove Ward.
Henna Mir, representing Feltham West.
John Todd, Chiswick Homefield.
Councillor Samina Nagara, representing Feltham North.
Rhys Williams, Brentford East, Vice Chair of Planning Committee.
Rashid Bhatti, Hounslow Central.
Belger Bandel, Solicitor.
I'm Wendy Miriam, the clerk.
Before we move forward, I would like to move a vote of thanks to outgoing chair, ex-councillor Corina Smart. I think who's done a brilliant job, and I have I've got big shoes to fill, and I'll try my best, obviously with your cooperation. And can somebody second that, please? Thank you. And we agreed? Thank you for that. Can I ask all the members to switch their mobile phones off or put them on silent, please? And the members can tweet if they like. Sorry, members can't tweet, and the public members can tweet if they like. And good. To start with the good news. Councillor Williams is a father now. Got a young daughter a couple of days ago. And be prepared for sleepless nights. Yeah. Okay. Back to the agenda. Apologies first.
I've got Councillor Stroud.
Okay. Any more apologies? Yeah.
Councillor Atwal for lateness.
And Councillor Medea Asim for absence.
Okay. Any more? Nope. Okay.
I think Councillor Parisotto as well.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. Item number 2 is declaration of interest. Anybody declaring interest? Yeah. Councillor Lal.
Chair, I just want to bring to your attention that I had communications on items 5 and 6 on the agenda.
Thank you. Any more? Yeah. Councillor Lukey.
Item 5 from applicant and objector. Item 6 is in my ward, and I know the applicants. No, I don't know the applicants. I know the objectors, people living next door. And number 50 Thornbury Road, I'm put down as calling it in, but it wasn't in my ward when it was called in. That was in Heston, in Hounslow Central Ward, but it's now in Oswald Spring Grove Ward. So if I need to, if you need a name on it, rather than the old Heston Hounslow Central councillors, then so be it.
Okay. Yeah, you happy with that? Yeah.
Delighted.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry,
sorry. Councillor Todd.
Yeah, sorry. I've spoken on the phone to Mr. Irvine, who is here speaking, and another party involved with the one in Sharon Road, item 5, Chair.
Okay. Any more? Okay, I had.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry,
yeah, I've had communication on.
Yeah.
I've had communication on item 5 and item 6, including some supplementary advice from Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you. Right, I had the same. I had an email from item 5 and item 6 as well. Right. Item 3 is minutes of the meeting held on 3rd of March 22. I think there was only Councillor Todd was here only. So we all seen the minutes. Yeah. Oh, Councillor Mead was there.
Sorry, Chair. Same, I received emails as well. Yeah, so it's more or less same for everyone.
So,
They're perfect.
perfect.
They're perfect.
Excellent, excellent. No matter rising? Thank you. Do we agree? Thank you. And item 4 is again minutes of the meeting held on 21st of March 22. Again, Councillor Todd and Councillor Mead was there. And Councillor Luki was there as well. Yeah, 3 of them, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Agreed? Thank you. I'll sign the minutes. Thank you for that. Right, I'll come to item 5 now, which is 10 Sharon Road, Chiswick, page 14 to page 28. And who is the officer who's going to? Is it Eamon?
That's me. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Good evening, councillors. So what I'll do very briefly is give you an overview of the site, the proposal, and the consultation responses before handing back to the chair, and that's when we'll go to the speakers. We will come back to me to give my run through of the office's assessment and its recommendation. So we will get a chance to hear that as well. But very briefly. The item number 5, number 10 Sharon Road, it's a semi-detached single-family house in the Turnham Green Conservation Area. It is in a flood zone. It is in flood zone 3A. This is an image here of the front of the property. It's on the left-hand side. You can see there's a small front garden behind a low-level brick wall. There is a street tree that I will draw your attention to, just creeping into the image on the right-hand side there. There's a better image in a second. This is the rear of the property. You can see it's been extended to the with a single-story side extension. Back to the front of the property. Again, a closer look at the brick boundary wall in the front garden and the tree in the distance there of the left-hand side image. The proposal is for the excavation of the land beneath the house to create a basement. It would extend under the entire footprint of the main house and the extension I mentioned a second ago. The basement would have internal access to the ground floor level. There will be a front and a rear light well, and with a further element of excavation beyond the rear light well into the garden. In terms of the plan, you can see that it's the bottom plan on this image. There would be a WC, a utility room within the basement, as well as a gym, media room, and a playroom. We've received 11 representations to the scheme, all objecting to the scheme. So just a quick summary of the consultation responses. Concerns about flood risk, basements being out of character, the construction impacts of the development, damage to the existing street tree, impact on the structure of neighbouring houses, a lack of need for basement and the proposed uses, and the light emanating from the light wells will be visible to neighbouring houses. Officers are recommending the application for approval. As I said, will come back to me shortly for the background on that assessment. So back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Biddup, would you like to come and take a seat there, please? You'll have 5 minutes, yeah? And we'll warn you when 30 seconds left. Yeah, all yours.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be taking up 5 minutes because I think the story is, or the issue is better outlined by people who live in the road who are here, Tom Irvin and Bob Bond. I'm Councillor Joanna Biddulph for Chiswick Gunnersbury Ward, and I've been in the same position as others here who are here for the first time. I served on the planning committee in my first year, and I remember how I felt at my first meeting, rather at sea. This is an unusual call-in. Normally, call-ins are about neighbour disputes or something like that, or they're big planning applications that are controversial. This isn't about a neighbour's dispute. This isn't NIMBYism. This is actually about policy and is therefore, I think, rather more challenging. you've had a very informative email from Tom Irvin about that. There has also been an update since that in the addendum report, which I don't think Eamon referred to just now. And in many ways, that's now more important than the original application because the dispute isn't about a neighbourly issue. I think that's all I need to say, and I really would just like to hand over to Tom and Bob. But it is a policy issue which is a bit more challenging for the planning committee than a neighbourly dispute might be.
Okay, can you stay there for a minute, please, if members want to ask any questions?
Sure.
Members, any question for Councillor Vidal? Yeah.
Councillor Vidal, the policy you're referring to, is that the flood risk policy?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. There are differences now in the officer's report from what there was from those at the beginning. There has been an admission in the addendum report, which I think is significant. Well, I know it's significant.
Any more questions? Yep, Councillor Todd.
Yeah. Hi, Joe. As you correctly say, there are 2 paragraphs in the addendum report, which mean previous ones are deleted. Yeah. What do you say the officers include it and make comment? It's simple. I'm quoting out of context. It should still go ahead. And what's your response to that? I've been given a chart by, but our dilemma is we've got to reduce the complex matter down to simplicity, really. And it seems to me that this is all about flooding and risk. If that, you make your own heads there. So you've also done a lot of detail looking into this. Would you like to add to what the applicant said in this mammoth document you sent us, or the addendum report? That's all.
Obviously, I'm trying to be objective, and I remember my days on planning. It seems to me that it's premature to make a decision without getting more information on the planning, on the flood risk. It is clear that the policy, the current policy, is now wrong and should be reviewed before a decision is made on this application. The issue isn't about one application, it's the knock-on effect that a basement will have in displacing water in an area where it is in the zone that has been outlined. Other houses are going to be affected by it in the long term as well. And if there are more applications for basements, obviously that's going to be much worse. And this covers, interestingly, this covers Chiswick, which is affected. It's not just this road. There are other properties over a wide area.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
So it's premature to make the decision is the answer to your question, deferral or refusal.
Hi, sorry, I got a bit stuck in traffic. I'm Councillor Harleen Atwell here. I represent Heston Central Ward. Thank you.
Councillor Atwell, because you came late, you can listen to the debate, but you cannot vote on this one. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Can we now invite Mr. Tom Irvin, the objector, please? It's been published yesterday on the website, Huntsville website. Can you give a copy? Can we have a copy there? You can have a copy now to have a look. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Urban, please take the seat. And again, you'll have 5 minutes when you start. When 30 seconds left, we'll notify you, yeah?
Thank you
All
very
yours
much.
when you're ready.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Tom Irvin. Thank you very much for your time. I've worked in housing for 20 years. I've managed over 6,000 homes owned by other London boroughs for 17 years, 4 years at chief executive level. And so I have some insight into the challenges that you face together. I live with my family at number 12 Sharon Road. It's a dead-end road with 11 houses and currently no basements in a conservation area. And we're one of 10 or I think possibly 11 households to submit objections. But please be assured that I have nothing against the applicant personally. I'm sorry if I've upset him through the objection, but we've lived alongside each other happily for 10 years as part of the wonderful and unique community on Sharon Road. And I also want to assure you that I am supportive of homeowners' rights to develop their homes, but there are policy limits to those rights. Hounslow's policy says that this application should be refused because of flood risk. I broke this down in section A of my email to you all. Hounslow Local Plan Policy EQ3 says that all proposed developments must be consistent with the West London Strategic Flood Risk Assessment. This is confirmed in the report from the planning officer. Table 4.2 in that Strategic Flood Risk Assessment says specifically of basements in flood zone 3A, and I think you've got a copy in front of you, new developments are restricted to less vulnerable and water compatible uses only. The report that you originally received said that the proposed development was for a less vulnerable use, which was just wrong. The addendum report has now confirmed that the building is in fact for a more vulnerable use because it is a dwelling house, and the extension to the living space does not change that. This development is in flood zone 3A. There is no debate about it. It's confirmed in the planning officer's report and again this evening. Let me repeat, table 4.2, new basement developments in flood zone 3A are restricted to less vulnerable and water compatible uses only. So this more vulnerable basement development in flood zone 3A is not allowed under Hounslow policy. The officer's report, as amended by the addendum report, now contains no explanation as to why this restriction should be ignored. So I'm forced to guess how the planning department will try to get around this restriction. Guess one, they will tell you that they've checked with their consultants Metis, who have confirmed their interpretation. I received an email from the planning department last night accordingly, but it is entirely clear that the consultants were answering the wrong question. You may want to ask me about that. Guess two, they will tell you that the National Planning Policy Framework doesn't completely rule out more vulnerable basements in flood zone 3A. That is correct, but it does require local flood authorities like the London boroughs to carry out strategic flood risk assessments specific to the area so that risks are more carefully analysed and managed. That is what the West London SFRA is. It imposes controls and requirements specific to the area to manage the risks. Why is it important? Well, we're all aware of climate change. There is a huge collective effort by multiple agencies to manage the risks of climate change. Ultimately, this is about building safety and the enormous costs to the country of flooding. The National Strategy on Flood Risk aims to reduce, as far as possible, the chances of catastrophic flood events like the reservoir failure that would inundate Sharon Road. But the other strand of that national strategy is to try to minimise the number of properties which would be flooded. That's why basements aren't allowed in some areas. The planning department confirmed to me that they do not consider flood risk for minor developments except checking that a flood risk assessment has been done. But please note that in 2019, the council commissioned an expert to carry out a more detailed flood risk assessment at two sites approximately 60 metres from Sharon Road. The expert concluded, groundwater, no basement levels should be developed on this site. And the description of the geology and hydrology of those sites applies identically at Sharon Road. I also want to briefly note that the Environment Agency confirms that basements in aquifers increase the risk of groundwater flooding to neighbouring properties. Experts,
30 seconds left.
Thank you. Experts say that damage will inevitably be caused to neighbouring properties. experts say that the risk of permanent visual damage to the neighbouring properties is high in this case because of their age and construction method. If anyone speaks after me and causes you to doubt the fact that this should be refused, please ask me questions about those doubts. But tonight you do have a chance to put a halt to the authorising of inappropriate basement developments because of flood risk. Thank you for listening. I hope we've been clear. Please make the right decision, but if you do need more time to consider it, please consider deferring. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Irvine. And members, have you got questions for the objector? Yeah. Please, Councillor Bowring.
Could you comment on what further detailed flood risk assessment you think could or should be carried out?
I think that you need to be satisfied that my interpretation of the policy is correct. Now, you have got that document in front of you, and it's quite simple in some senses, given that you have had confirmed by the planning department that it's a more vulnerable development, it's in flood zone 3A, and that policy is clear that it shouldn't be allowed. But if you're not confident that is what it means or what it should mean, then I think it would be appropriate to explore that further. I've been trying to do that with the planning department for some time, and it would be appropriate to ask for an expert to, or even for Metis who produced it, to say, does it mean what it, is it meant to mean what it does, what it says? It's possible that it didn't, but it has been signed off by 6 London boroughs, including Hounslow, after extensive consultation as a primary consultee with the Environment Agency.
Yeah. Did you show your email to us, to the applicant?
I didn't, and I regret that, because I have always, I've said at the start, I've always had a good relationship with Azim, and I like him very much. And I have been conscious that, unfortunately, our objection to the basement has caused a little bit of...
That's peripheral to not showing evidence and giving them the chance to rebut it. I mean, it's an aside comment, but it's significant because it's got 4 pages here.
Yeah, I haven't done so, is the answer to the question, and I wish I had. But I was under the impression that the applicant was in regular communication with the planning department. And I was only 2 months ago, the reason that this was allowed, according to the planning department, was because there were stairs in it. A week ago, a report came out saying that it's allowed because it's less vulnerable. And yesterday, a report came out saying it's more vulnerable, but it's allowed anyway. So the difficulty has been throughout that I've been trying to engage the planning department to explain to them, this is my clear understanding of this policy. What else can it mean? And repeatedly, I've failed to have that traction to get anyone to agree with me or to even commit to exploring it. So in that process, it's taken so long that I haven't actually communicated with Azim in the way that I should. And I apologise to him for that.
Not a major point, but it's courtesy.
Of course.
Sometimes you get resolution on the facts. That's what's important to me.
Any more questions?
Yes, please.
Sorry, you got another question? Go on then.
So, yeah, it's an interesting, huge email. You've not mentioned noise at all in your presentation tonight. Is that ancillary or one of your key points?
I think that, thank you for the question. I think, and I'm sorry to all of you for the enormity of that email. It was difficult to write a short one in the time available. But the other issues I think are important. There has been no noise assessment, as far as I'm aware, and basements which are developed in aquifers or having to deal with water tables will require a sump pump, which will be running either constantly if it's always under the water table or at regular intervals.
Don't challenge that.
Yeah.
But you said you're running an estate of 6,000 houses. You know, the planning committee can enforce conditions. You could have asked conditions for the noise, couldn't you? That's an option rather than put that as a point to fail.
Yeah, I suppose the point that I was trying to make there was that we don't know whether or not there'll be noise because there hasn't been an assessment done. Other boroughs would require a noise assessment. I thought it was a relevant consideration.
Ask you the question, you'll give me the answers. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Mr.
Sorry,
Williams? Sorry, go on. You want?
I'm very slow, I'm afraid. Yeah. You mentioned the Ove, Arup and Partners report. Now, we haven't seen it, but it relates to Lambeth.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure what the soil content is in Lambeth. It may not be the same. Why do you base that report or use that report for Chiswick when it's come from a third party?
Another good question.
An area.
Thank you. I don't think that Hounslow has commissioned an equivalent report. In the course of researching the issue, I looked at this report by Arab Partners, which I thought you might accept as a reasonably good authority, and they have set out that there is a differing level of risk of damage, permanent visual damage, according to the age and type of construction of the building. They did so for Lambeth, but it applies across any construction of that type. And so I thought that it was relevant to tell you that early 20th century properties are much more likely, according to OVARUP, to have permanent visual damage.
This report here, what you put this on our desk today, what's that for?
Thank you to Bob, my other neighbour, for coming and bringing that. That is page 2 of table 4.2 of the West London Strategic Flood Risk Assessment, which policy EQ3 says all developments should comply with.
But that's dated April 2018, and we're presently going through a review of that document.
I think certainly of the strategy you are going through a review, yes. But I think that's the current policy.
And my final question.
Go on as well.
The key word to me seems to be vulnerable. And the officers make great play, and I agree to a certain extent. That basements are basement, but they come in different packages. So some want to be cinemas. But you know, the rule is that no one can live in a basement. So if they're not living there, they're not subject to risk, are they?
The way the National Planning Policy Framework sees it is a fully self-contained basement where someone lives is called a basement dwelling, and that's classified as highly vulnerable. If a dwelling house, a building which contains a dwelling house, is defined as more vulnerable by virtue of its use, by the fact that people live there. So if you're extending your living space into a basement, as the report now confirms, it is a more vulnerable use. You're simply extending the existing more vulnerable use into the ground.
Okay, and my final question, sorry, Chair, great point made on the 2 light wells.
I accept that that probably won't carry a great deal of weight.
At the risk of being offensive.
Okay,
Milking the
understood.
cow bit there, wasn't it?
Okay, it's certainly less material than the other issues.
Well, the front garden is full of bushes and plants, so I thought that was...
Yeah, the rear gardens actually do have a different character, and I suppose some of us have thought that perhaps the rear gardens would be quite visually effective, but I realise that's a matter of opinion. I think the main substantive issue is less so.
But given that your presentation is evidence-based, there's no evidence on that, is there?
Fair enough.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Todd. Councillor Williams, you want a question?
Just quickly, you dangled nebulously something in your statement about, you know, what questions someone should be asking and to ask you to elaborate on it. So I'm asking you to elaborate on it.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much. That relates to what I think the planning department may say, which is I had an email last night from one of the officers saying that they checked with the consultant and the consultant had confirmed their interpretation, which I assume they meant about table 4.2 that we've been discussing. It was clear in the questions that the consultant was answering a different, sorry, in the answer, they were answering a different question, which essentially was confirming that if there is an existing basement, which there isn't here, then to extend that use would be acceptable as if it was already a less vulnerable use, but to introduce a new highly vulnerable use would not be acceptable. That is true and it's helpful, but it's not helpful to this application. It's not really relevant to this application. It's not answering the question we need answered.
Thank you. Can I ask the legal, please? This question was asked by Councillor Williams. Is it okay? Can he still stay with that? It seems a bit sort of taken aside. Did you hear that question properly? It's fine. You're happy with that? Okay. Right. Any more questions? No. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harman. Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Okay. Do we have Mr. Asim? Yep. Mr. Asim, you're the applicant, yes? Okay. You got 5 minutes.
You can turn your mic on.
There's a PowerPoint. Thank you very much. Well, I'll refer to that. When does my time start? Okay. Thank you very much. Well, look, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I want to make 6 brief points on flood risk, what I would say, I mean, Mr. Irvine makes a number of points. To my mind, they're unevidenced. They're put before the committee, unevidenced. What Mr. Irvine really seeks to do is to overturn policy, and he's entitled to try and do that. But that is not the forum for today. The policy is as has been applied by the council. The policy makes clear that basements will be subject to strategic flood risk assessment. That has been carried out and been supplied. It's been considered by the expert planning officers at the council, and they, in their good judgment, have considered that the flood risk is past. In that respect, I have a look at the map here. What you've got here is you've got a number of basements in the surrounding area. Sharon Road should be visible with a dot there. Thank you very much. And the basements in red are those which have been approved since Turnham Green became a conservation area, and the others are surrounding basements. What Mr. Irvine doesn't do in his presentation tonight is to put forward any evidence of concern, of real life concern from residents as to flooding in the area. And that's because there isn't any to put forward, otherwise you would have thought he would have done so. And that backs up the approach that the council has taken in its assessment of flood risk. The second point I'd like to make is well, Mr. Irvine's focused on character and appearance, not today, but in previous points. If we can flick through to the next slide, you can see this is one of the houses on Sharon Road. If you go to the next, this is one of the sides of 35 Alwyn Avenue that you can see from the street. If you go to the next, this is another house, and you can see that they've got a brick wall which is white and a shed on the front garden. If you go to the next, again, a driveway, and the next, another driveway, and the next, the shed in the front garden. So the point really here is, insofar as it's being said that the appearance of adding a basement, i.e. a metal grille covered by a brick wall with foliage that you really can't see from the street, would affect the appearance of the street scene, my point is it won't. In terms of character, a lot was made of Mr. Irvine and the objectors in their objections on character. I mean, it hasn't been raised today because he's just focused on flood risk. But the character won't be changed, in my opinion, not least of all because it's not visible from the street scene, but also because what is the character of the area? In my view, the character of the area is people like me and Mr. Irvine and others who come with their families, hardworking, wish to stay in the area for a long time. Post-pandemic, people are looking for more living space. This is a reasonable way to increase living space, and the character will be preserved because people like me and others who are hoping to do these basements will be putting down roots and staying for longer rather than moving on. That to me is character in the area. The next point is about all the sort of points that have been taken together on disturbance, noise, damage to adjoining houses. A simple point to that is party wall agreements deal with that. We've got construction logistics plan, a construction method statement. That's all been submitted. I've done that in advance to try and work with the council and to work with the street to make sure that those concerns are taken care of. I accept there will be some disturbance, but in my view, that's not a good reason. Otherwise, nothing would ever get done in terms of building work. I don't think the light wells point is really going to be a big point given the comments that have been made. I recognise there's been a large number of objections.
30 seconds left.
I think the reality of those objections are not the point that Mr. Irvine seeks to make today. On that point, what he's really seeking to do is challenge Hounslow policy. Like I said, he's entitled to challenge Hounslow policy, but this is not the forum in which to do so. Hounslow has produced guidance which has gone through consultation. Members of the public have considered it. That guidance has been complied with, and for that reason, I would invite you to approve the councillor's recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Asim. Just stay there, please, for a couple of minutes. Any questions for Mr. Asim? Members? Yeah, Councillor Todd?
Yeah, that was a very fair presentation. You've heard and you've now seen, I presume, what Mr. Irving read. Is there any particular point on the policy he challenges you'd like to develop? The word vulnerable drops in very easily.
Well, look, I mean, it's
How have you, give me some tangible examples of during the construction stage or what you've proposed to minimise the risk to him and others?
well, we've obviously gone through the flood risk.
Very open question.
No, I understand that. Thank you for asking. We've obviously gone through the flood risk assessment, and that's positive. The council has scrutinised it carefully. The officers, they've explained it in this addendum report. Unfortunately, I hadn't seen it before, but they've explained it in paragraph 7.14 and 7.15, in particular by reference to the National Planning Policy Framework and the fact that that states that applications for some minor development should not be subject to those tests and be subject to specific flood risk assessment. The application has been subject to that specific flood risk assessment. It's a detailed assessment. The council considered it and they have passed it. So that's the answer to the first point in terms of minimising concerns through the assessment process. We've also carried out a construction logistics plan that explains how when the build is ongoing, there will be minimisation in respect of disruption, noise, any issues with people coming in and out of the street.
I think that's peripheral. I want to stick to push you a bit on. Is the water table very high? Will you need pumps?
Well, I mean, I can't speak to how high the water table is. Sorry, I'm not an expert, and neither is Mr. Irving in the height of the water table.
I'm not suggesting he does, but
yes,
it is about vulnerability.
Yes.
And what is vulnerability where there are risks associated which may impact on the construction and
yes,
the viability.
I appreciate that, but what I would say is it would be a strange position if you have, and you've seen the map at the very front, and perhaps we can scroll back to the map right at the very beginning of the slides. I mean, those are the number of basements that are pre-existing or are approved or are under construction at the moment in the surrounding streets. And I cannot, I mean, obviously I'm giving anecdotal evidence now, but I cannot, and Mr. Irving hasn't presented before you any evidence of concern from anyone in real life about flooding to their basement that is within those surrounding streets. Now that to me is compelling evidence, frankly, meeting the concerns about vulnerability. And of course, these are basements in the Turnham Green area. You'll be familiar. I think you mentioned, Councillor, that you're from the Homefield ward. I mean, obviously you're familiar that in the Homefield ward, which is located relatively close to the river, many basements exist and are being constructed. Frankly, if Mr. Irving's point effectively would put a stop, and this is his intention, it's a full frontal attack on the ability of householders in Chiswick to undertake a basement. He wants to stop, and he's been very frank about it, he wants to stop all basements being undertaken in Chiswick. Now that, he's entitled to that view.
We're coming away from planning.
Well, no, that is my right planning.
Can I stop you right there, please, both of you?
He's entitled to that view. Sorry.
Mr. Irving, I know you put your hand up 3-4 times. You had your time. People asked you a question. I can't give you more time. Sorry about that. Yeah.
He's entitled. Sorry, I was going to say he's entitled to that view, and if he wishes, and Ms. Bidoff, if they wish to get to a situation where policy in Hounslow is that within these areas there will be no basements, then the proper channel should be followed, which is that that should be lobbied for, campaigned for. That policy should then be consulted upon, as the SPD was back in, I think, 2016, 2017, and a change then made to that policy. But that cannot be done in this forum. And all I would say as a householder, councillor, I have sought to meet the requirements in every single way. What planning has asked of me, I've put forward those statements. I've done the flood risk assessment. I have met the SPD, and it's not being said that I haven't. And in those circumstances, I consider it's fair for, as the council is recommending, the planning committee is recommending that it is approved.
Okay, that's final point. Who prepared that?
I did.
And so you went through all the applications?
I had consultancy did so.
MZA?
MZA, yes.
Well, they wrote to us about 2 hours ago.
Yes, but
No,
this
that's
was submitted yesterday.
Okay.
Yes.
But
by the deadline, as I understand it from Miss Mary, when
on Messenger, not the bullet.
No.
I like to read papers beforehand. Not,
I understand.
Not on the tube, will it?
Of course.
It's interesting you haven't cited any evidence from all those applications in support of your case.
What sort of? I mean, the fact that the applications.
Open question. Look,
well, councillor, the fact that the applications themselves have been approved, and that basements, the yellow ones have been approved pre-conservation, the red ones have been approved post-conservation area, is, to my mind, the best evidence of the validity of those applications.
Okay, I'm asking you a question. Give the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions from members? Thank you, Mr. Sim.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you switch that microphone off, please?
Of course.
Thank you. Right. Back to Eamon, I think.
Thank you, Chair.
Can you answer those questions, like a couple of questions I was asked? It's against the policy. And the other one was noise assessment was not done or something. Yeah. In your briefing, can you cover that, please? Yeah.
Yes, will do, Chair. Thank you. Okay, I will rattle through some of the issues here and do come back to me with any questions. So officers have assessed the application. Apologies, just finding the plan. In terms of the impact on the neighbours, the biggest disruption to neighbours will be caused through the construction phase. That's where the disturbance will be in the short term. The applicant has submitted a construction logistics plan which deals with construction hours, noisy working, and materials delivery. And skips and things like that. So that's considered to be mitigated through that document. In terms of the character and appearance, we've mentioned light wells. There is a light well to the front, will be finished with a flush metal grille, and there is a light well to the back that's finished with a glass screen cover. They're considered acceptable and appropriate in the conservation area. In terms of trees, it hasn't come up yet, but it has been raised through the consultation period. There is a street tree. It's approximately 8 meters further down the road. It is outside number 8, I believe. As part of the construction logistics plan the applicant has submitted, there's an arboricultural statement in support of that to say the tree would not be affected by any excavation. It's outside of the root protection area. That brings me on to flood risk. So as we've heard, the site is in flood zone 3A, so it does have a higher probability of flooding. It can get quite technical, which we've heard tonight. Officers do rely on the strategic flood risk assessment for West London and the national guidance. Our interpretation of the policy and the guidance is that basements are acceptable in flood zone 3 areas, but only when they are extensions to the existing house, only when they have internal access to higher floors of the building, and only when they do not contain primary living accommodation and bedrooms. We're satisfied that those requirements have been met in this case. The applicant has submitted a flood risk assessment as well, which considers further elements of flooding, surface water flooding, and that's been prepared, that's been assessed, and that demonstrates that no flooding would be experienced, or increase in flood risk would be experienced on the site or at neighbouring properties. Noise was mentioned as an issue. I think that specifically about sump pumps and for the basement. That's not something we have addressed in our report. If noise was to be an issue, we could suggest an appropriately worded condition to ensure that any mechanical pump would operate below background noise levels, which is quite common with other mechanical ventilation and air conditioning units and things like that. So for those reasons, officers are satisfied with the details of the application. Officers are recommending the application for approval, subject to conditions. There are a number of conditions listed in the officer's report. The pertinent ones really are for the development to be carried out in accordance with the submitted flood risk assessment, the construction method statement, and also the construction logistics plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for the officer? Yep. Councillor Doyle.
Thanks for that. I'm not really moved by any of the arguments about appearance, character, light pollution. The one that does have me thinking is this flood risk, and there seems to be two opposing views from the objector, who makes quite extraordinary claims that, if are true, are very important, and yet from the council and from the applicant that all of the rules have been followed, all the boxes have been ticked, and that's what's sort of, I think, at the moment pointing me towards deferment. But I wonder if you can help me push me off the fence, so to speak. And I think specifically, can you unpack what sort of flood risk assessment is being carried out, how comprehensive that is, and if there is a more comprehensive one that might be appropriate?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I'll firstly unpack the policy point and then the flood risk assessment point, if I may. Flooding is quite a technical issue. We do have consultants at the council to deal with that on the planner's behalf. Essentially, what national guidance tells us is that extensions to a house in a flood zone such as this, 3A, are more vulnerable uses. I think we've heard that already. As I say, more vulnerable uses are acceptable in national policy terms if they don't, if it was to be a basement, they don't contain the primary living accommodation and they do have that internal access. Now, there's been lots of terms both in the report and the addendum and tonight about vulnerability, and the extension, because it's part of the house, it is a more vulnerable use. Now, there's no objection in principle to having a more vulnerable use in a flood zone 3A. It's just making sure that it is designed in the right manner to protect or to not increase risk to people or property. So that's why we asked for the internal access and for no sleeping accommodation. The point about the strategic flood risk assessment for West London is, it confuses matters in my view. It quite rightly states that basement dwellings, which this isn't, are unacceptable for obvious reasons. And thank you to the speaker for providing this document. The highlight in pink is almost missing a bit in my view. So other new basement developments are restricted to less vulnerable water compatible uses. My view is that that's referring to that's not referring to extensions to houses. That's for standalone developments. Say, for example, if you wanted to excavate a basement for an office, that's an odd example, but that's my view and my interpretation is that's what that's referring to. The following sentence says that all basement rooms must have internal access and egress to higher floor levels, and it goes on. So my view is that this West London strategic flood risk assessment is missing that bit on that is clarified in national guidance about extensions to houses being appropriate in this flood zone. In terms of the site-specific flood risk assessment, So yes, the applicant has prepared that and submitted that in support of the application. It does run through the various elements of flooding. So it does run through river flooding, which is the reference to the flood zone 3A. It talks about surface water flooding as well. The site is in a low risk. Let me just double check that I've got that right. Strategic. So it's a very low risk of surface water flooding. The applicant's flood risk assessment says that because it's a basement and it's because it's under the footprint of the main house, there's no increased surface water runoff. There's no extra development. There's no extra roofs for it to run off. So there's no increase in surface water flooding. The applicant's flood risk assessment does cover groundwater flooding as well, and it says that there is a potential for groundwater flooding in the area and on this site, and it proposes mitigation measures if the application were to be approved and implemented. It requires site inspections as part of the construction by a structural engineer to ensure that no groundwater is found as part of the development. And then it future-proofs the basement itself from groundwater flooding by not necessarily relevant to planning, but waterproof internal render, waterproof electricity sockets, secured manhole covers, and for future occupiers or for the house as a whole to sign up to the Environment Agency's flood warning service. So, in terms of on-site impacts, the applicant's flood risk assessment does conclude that there wouldn't be any impacts in terms of flooding on the site or at neighbouring sites, and does include mitigation measures if groundwater flooding is found during the construction. So that's in terms of the policy test, that's shared, as we've heard. You might be expecting that officer's view is shared by the council's flood risk consultant. So we've got no reason to disagree with the applicant's flood risk assessment.
So, and before you go, Mike is our interim head of.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful for members just sort of briefly explain the strategy, if you like, behind both the government's and environment agencies, flood risk policy. So in areas like this where there's a high risk of flooding, first of all, they don't want to bring any more people into those areas. So new residential development would struggle to get consent, and there's criteria where they may get consent. But then those people who are already in the area, like houses that already exist, the policy is to not put them at any greater risk than they are already at, which is where something like a basement would not be allowed to be used for primary accommodation, particularly sleeping accommodation where people could be trapped in their beds. So that's effectively the policy strategy. So therefore a basement, and basements can be built under permitted development rights. It's important that members appreciate that. There is a fallback position here that wouldn't require planning permission. Where planning permission is required, we do have a level of control, and that's where we would prevent the use for primary living accommodation. Hope that helps. You can't ask questions, so it's no point in keep putting your hand up.
Yeah, I told you, Mr. Arman, you've done your 5 minutes. You can't now intervene. It's up to members now to decide. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Question? Let's cover that. Happy. Any more questions from members? Yeah, Councillor Luki.
Just that last comment, Mr. Kiley, where you said that applicants already there are already permitted development rights. Why? So what's the point of this application then? How does this application differ from what would be allowed under permitted development rights?
Yeah. So the way permitted development rights are described, they do not exclude basement extensions. There are limitations in what you can do. I'll come on to it. So this property has had an extension on the rear, sort of filled in the nib. Yeah. And he's proposing to extend effectively under the external walls. So because he's going underneath that nib, he breaches that particular criteria. Also, the light wells at the front and the back go beyond the existing walls and therefore breaches that criteria. So the permitted development rights would allow an extension either lining up with the original external walls or something smaller than that. So there is a fallback position.
Right, so he'd be allowed to, so the applicant would be allowed to have a basement anyway, as long as they didn't breach the boundaries of their original building.
Yes.
Right.
I think that's what you said. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions from members? Councillor William.
Yeah, just quickly. Obviously, one of the reasons I didn't declare I received the emails from all of the various people is that I haven't had a chance to read them because I've obviously been a bit busy the last few days. So I did read these papers about a week ago, and obviously I think part of the cause of confusion tonight has been this addendum, and I guess I'd like to understand what we felt we needed to clarify on our initial position from as a planning team, as a planning authority, what it is we're clarifying and why that doesn't change our recommendation. What just on that policy point, I think would be very interesting to understand.
Yeah, go on.
I can do that. Thank you, Councillor. Apologies to councillors and Councillor Bidoff for not drawing your attention to the addendum when I first gave my presentation. What we're trying to clarify here, since the publication of the report, it's been referred to. There's been quite a lot of back and forth on emails and phone calls, trying to pin down what the definition of vulnerability for this type of use. What we're clarifying is that the initial published officer's report was wrong to classify it as a less vulnerable use, because that's just simply not correct. The officers tried through the addendum report to correctly identify it as a more vulnerable use, which is what the national guidance tells us extensions to houses in flood zones are defined as. So that's what we're trying to convey to you through the addendum report.
Happy? Have you got supplementary?
But yes, sorry, Chair. But that doesn't change our overall position.
Thank you. You did ask that first time around. Sorry, it doesn't change our overall position. It being more vulnerable is still in accordance with national guidance.
And so what we're effectively saying is the MPPF here trumps the other stuff in the hierarchy of what we consider. Is that the position?
It's all part of the development plan, so it should be looked at in the round. The strategic flood risk assessment, the West London version, is our local level insight, if you will, to flooding. There is no conflict, in my view, between the London West London version and the national guidance. As I think I said earlier, I think there is a bit missing out of our West London one to clarify whether all new basement developments are less vulnerable, or whether there should be another sentence in there about household extensions. So in my view, there's no conflict between either policy.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions from members? No? Okay, I'll open it for debate. Anybody? Are we all happy with it? Anybody's going to propose? Yeah.
Chair, I'm happy to move for approval on the basis of what we've heard.
Officer recommendation?
To follow the officer
We need a
recommendation.
seconder? Okay, Councillor, sorry.
Sorry, can I just clarify whether that's including the additional condition to
Yes.
deal with potential
Of
noise?
course, yeah.
Yes,
always.
yeah. Okay.
Sorry, just on this, I mean, what are the conditions that we're looking at on this? The additional
Okay.
conditions that would be useful.
Eamon will explain that, but
Okay.
Councillor Lal seconded already. Yeah, go on. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah,
Conditions?
the issue came up about whether there was a need for a sump. So if that need occurs, then we'd have a condition that would ensure that the sump doesn't create a noise nuisance. It's a fairly standard condition that we put on air conditioning units or extraction fans, that type of thing.
Sorry, that's noise and vibrations.
We'll take a vote as it's been proposed and seconded. Officer's recommendation. Okay, can we have 4, please? For the okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, against? Abstentions? It's been carried, yeah. Thank you. We go to item number 6 now, 42 St. Crispus Close, Isleworth. All right, Eamon, you're going to introduce as well? Yeah.
I know.
Keep up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Next on the agenda is item number 6, number 42, St. Christopher's Close. I believe we have speakers for this one as well, Chair, so I will just do you a quick overview of the site and the proposal. So, site location plan on the screen, outlined in red. It is a 2-storey single-family house. It's an end-of-terrace house. It fronts St. Christopher's Close. There's a grassed area between the front and the side of the to the front and the side of the property, running up to the highway, which is not currently enclosed. There's a remnant of a brick boundary wall that I'll draw your attention to, and may come back to that later, which is to the side of the site. This is an image of opposite the site at number 94 Thornbury Road, and you can see the boundary treatment in effect there, and another image of further up the road, similar style estate and houses with a variety of boundary treatment. The proposal here is to the proposal here is to erect a brick boundary wall and reposition the existing timber fence. So this is the existing location site plan on the screen. The proposed plan you can see here. So the new brick wall would run back of the footpath along Thornbury Road, and the existing timber fence, which you can see here in this dashed line, will be repositioned along the frontage parallel with the front elevation. This is the elevation of the wall. So it's a standard brick wall, 1 meter in height, with a 0.8 meter height railing on top, and brick piers either end. We have had 4 representations through the consultation process, 4 objections. Just briefly, summary of those. They were objecting to the removal of amenity land, the change in visual nature of the open plan estate, obstruction of the public footway, contrary to restrictive covenants on the land, a failure to preserve the character of the conservation area, and negative impact on property values, and mention of a fence that has previously been erected without permission. Again, officers are recommending approval. I'll hand back to the chair just now for speakers.
Thank you, Eamon. I believe we have 2 speakers on this. Okay, who's going to come? Mr. Foxton first, or? Oh, have we got? Oh, Councillor Chaudhary, I'll give you the first chance. Sorry, didn't realize that. Yeah. And our mayor is going to look after the baby, yeah? Right, Councillor Chaudhary, 5 minutes when you start.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Committee for allowing me to speak on the proposal that I called in. I did this based on conversations that I've had with residents who will be greatly affected if permission is granted. As you can see, it's proposed to close off the green open space that currently and importantly historically has graced the area for many, many years. The green space has the precedent of use by the community as amenity land since the construction of these premises, something that they've done peacefully. By building this wall, residents will no longer be able to enjoy the open space that they've enjoyed for many years. We recognise it's private land, but the communal use should take priority here. The style and design suggested is not in keeping with the local area. St. Christopher's Close is within the Spring Grove Conservation Area. Therefore, greater care must be taken because if permission is granted today, then the precedents will follow that future applications will also need to be approved and will completely change the look, not only of St Christopher's Close, but also of Thornbury Road, particularly on the east side, which is open and gives a lot of quite a softer appearance at the moment. And if that was all walled up, then again, that would create a tunnel. Members will note that the papers say there isn't any history here, but there is. And Eamon mentioned it. There was a fence that was erected in 2016, which was then subsequently removed because planning permission hadn't been sought. This part of St Christopher's Close is right up against where the bus stop is as well. And again, that will create some barriers for people who are wanting to use a bus stop there. Members of the committee, I urge you to refuse this permission, or at the very least, defer it so that the further negotiations can take place, so that we can find something that's a bit more amenable to residents, and something that will help maintain the conservation of the local area and help residents have access to the amenity that they have sought for many, or have had access to for many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chaudhary. Can I ask you a question first? You said defer it. What would they solve?
To give time to have a conversation with the applicant and residents, because the applicants did come back with a second proposal, but again, it's not acceptable because it still has that brick wall.
Any more questions from members? Yep, Councillor William.
Councillor Chowdhury, you say you acknowledge it's private land. Is that not at the end of the day the whole deal here?
I would say it's not, because there is right of access, and if people have had access for more than I believe it is 7 years, but in this case it's a lot longer than that, then that should take priority in my view.
I think it's important that we separate planning issues from property law issues.
Chair, it's not appropriate to have the comment right now from the officers. Can we have that later on, please?
We can have it later on.
Yes, yes, thank you.
I'm not familiar with your procedures,
Oh, well,
so
this
I
is our
apologise
procedures.
if it's premature, but I thought it was pertinent at the
That's
time.
right. Yeah, fine, yeah. Okay, any more questions? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Luki.
I know the answer to this question. Who maintains this land at present? And how long have they been maintaining it?
So Hounslow Highways have been maintaining this land, and therefore the council does take responsibility of the land. For how long? Since the PFI, they have definitely been maintaining it. So however long that is.
Questions? No? Now, Mike, you can.
Yeah, sorry. It's
Let him answer that. There's no harm.
Sorry, Chair, we haven't gone through the, we've had officer presented.
Before,
Sorry,
hang on, before Councillor go on, all we need is clarification. There's no harm for that, is it?
Officers can clarify after people have spoken, Chair.
If that's what you wish,
Well,
yes,
I'll
that's
leave it
fine.
up to, look, I'll leave it up to you, Chair. I know Mr. Kiley's new, and
No.
this is how we've normally done this over the last number of years.
Okay, I was thinking there's no harm if we can clarify that now. Can you do it now, please, Mike? And then we take it
Certainly.
later, yeah?
It's important to separate out planning law from property law. If it is the case that there is right of access over it, then that will prevent any planning permission from being implemented. So that is not a consideration on whether or not to grant planning permission. Property law exists separately and can be enforced or otherwise separately, and shouldn't cloud your judgment on the planning merits of this development.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, thank you. Sorry, anyone else? No? Thank you, Councillor Chaudhary.
Thank you.
Okay, can we now have the objectors, please? Who's coming first? Okay, can I just make it clear? You got 5 minutes between you two. So whichever way you want to take it, yeah? And time starts when you start speaking, yeah?
Mike.
Okay, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you. I think we speak as residents of St Christopher's Close. We're not planning experts, but we reflect the objections of many residents in St Christopher's Close who feel very strongly. I'm going to refer to some of the pictures in the document I circulated to all of you yesterday. Our first objection is that this application seeks to enclose the green open space, which is part of the estate plan, a visual asset to which the public have had access for over 30 years. They use it to stand and talk, or for their children to play safely while parents wait for a bus. That's in picture 1. We have a good reason to believe historically this is amenity land. When I moved here 32 years ago, we noticed that this open space was being maintained by the Highways Department, although it was within the ownership of number 42. We made inquiries to the council, who informed us that this was because it was amenity land. This has been confirmed by a neighbour who has lived here since the estate was built. A few years later, a Hounslow official knocked on our door and asked about the status of this open space, as Hounslow's records of the site had been lost in an accident. We explained what we had been told, and he said he would ensure that it was properly recorded. Hounslow Highways have continued to maintain the site. We were a little surprised by the Hounslow Planning Officer's assessment of this objection, as they appeared to suggest that they are unaware that privately owned land can be designated as amenity land, or that enforcement action had previously been taken in 2016. Our second objection is that it changes the entire visual nature of an integral part of this period open plan estate, and will create a precedent for the construction of more walls and fences in this estate and possibly in other period open plan estates elsewhere. Picture 4 shows the visual impact of a fence previously installed without permission by the applicant and was removed following enforcement action. The residents are very proud of our street and the open plan design, and as a result, no walls or fences have hitherto been erected at the boundaries between the gardens and the pavement. And third, as Councillor Chowdhury said, about not having a tunnel effect on Thornbury Road. Brick walls and metal railings have never been used in the boundaries in St Christopher's Close and are not in keeping with the houses in St Christopher's Close, so we object to the materials being used. We're also concerned by the planning officer assessment in the context of the conservation area, which seeks to support this application to construct a wall and railings up to the pavement by inappropriate comparisons with older styles of properties in Thornbury Road that were designed with enclosed walled gardens. And earlier they showed a picture on there of number 94 Thornbury Road on the other side of the road, which is clearly not comparable. That one. That is clearly comparing apples with pears, or in fact fairly small apples with fairly large pears. Comparison should be with open plan properties in St Christopher's Close rather than selectively picking properties elsewhere to compare with. So to summarise, to approve this application would create precedents for both the enclosure of this and other green public open spaces and more enclosures of this type in St Christopher's Close. We ask you to refuse this application.
Okay, would you like to carry on?
No, I support all his suggestions and that's it.
Thank you. And question from members, please. Yep, Councillor.
I did do a little site visit, have a look around, and I really agree that this image here is not. I think you're right. It's not a fair comparison. My concern about the overall impact and the change is about these front garden things. So the unique property, it's the end property, but I think we almost haven't seen enough visual examples of that whole estate and all of those open plan gardens, which I did see on a site visit. And I wondered if you'd like to just elaborate a bit further on that.
Well, okay. There is, I know it's not actually relevant in the sense that, when the properties were built, there were covenants on the land. And I know that's not relevant from a planning point of view, but it has actually been observed by all the residents. So in fact, the original covenant said there should be no barriers or walls, constructions of anything between the front gardens and the pavement. And that was actually it. And everybody has observed that. And there are none on the estate at all, other than a retaining wall on Thornbury Road.
Thank you. And can we have questions, please? Any more questions? Yep, Councillor Luki.
Oh, sorry.
So thank you, Jerry Folkeson. The applicant, or in the report I read somewhere, the applicant wants to enclose this, a bit like the Earl of Jersey and Duke of Northumberland back in the day, wants to enclose this because there's there's antisocial behaviour takes place on that green there. What are your, that's what I'm going to ask you. What are your experiences, the neighbours' experiences, and Alfredo, what the neighbours' experiences of antisocial behaviour on that green at the moment?
Well,
or
I live
recently?
next door to number 42, and I've never seen any unsocial behaviour there, antisocial behaviour. And I was interested as well in the application. It talked about the fact it was used for, it was open to use for fly tipping and drug dealing. Well, I must admit, the drug dealers in Hounslow are a lot smarter than that. They're not going to stand on a site besides the main road, well lit, and by a bus stop. Drug dealers go down, they go and hide in the garage areas down the end of the cul-de-sac. So never seen any drug dealing there. And as far as fly tipping is concerned, it is no different to anything that's been dumped on the pavements. And on the odd occasion, I've asked for something to be removed from the pavements on the other corner. And I've also asked for things to be removed from there, and Hounslow Highways have done it promptly. But it is no more than I would see anywhere else in the street. So that is untrue.
Tony, have you got supplementary? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I report fly tips down Thornbury Road, and I've never reported any on the green. You've got an open aspect there at St Christopher's Close. You've got an open aspect there at Morton Avenue.
Exactly the same.
And that's exactly the same. And has anybody ever attempted to close that off? And as far as you know, does Hounslow Highways still maintain that bit of land?
The one on the corner of Morton Avenue, yes, they do.
Right. That's question. They're leading questions, Chair, but that gives some context that doesn't appear in the. One more about antisocial behaviour. Have you ever seen the police down there on the green apart from doing speed watch?
No.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Any more questions from members? No. Thank you, gentlemen. And do we have the applicant, Mr. Singh, here? Nope. Okay, so we haven't got Mr. Singh here. That's fine. So back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, as I alluded to further, officers are recommending the application for approval. It's not been discussed tonight, but just to cover all bases, impact on neighbours, we don't consider there to be any impact on neighbours, just given its position and its separation distance. Then back to character and appearance. Yes, it. Thank you. It's a brick built wall. It's a common feature found in this part of Isleworth. Yes, it probably responds more to Thornbury Road than it does to St Christopher's Close, but it's a brick built wall with metal railings, and it wouldn't. Officers do not consider it to be an inappropriate feature at this part of Thornbury Road or St Christopher's Close. The grassed area is part of the setting of St Christopher's Close. Officers feel that is maintained because the enclosed area wouldn't project any further forward than the front elevation of the main house. So the open aspect on the corner and the entrance to St Christopher's Close would be maintained, which is appropriate in the conservation area. Just to respond to a few points that were raised there, we've had some answers already. But in terms of the land ownership, the applicant of number 42 is the owner of this grassed area. Any covenants wouldn't be a reason to refuse planning permission. Impacts on the public footpath, there would be no encroachment onto the public footpath, so there wouldn't be any impact of safety of highway users there. There's a very slim slither of land to the front of the site. If you can, you can see my cursor. So where the lamppost, the street pole, the pole is for the street name. a very thin slither of land there is actually adopted amenity space. So Hounslow Highway should maintain that slither. I can't explain why they go above and beyond their duty. So the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions, mainly to implement the permission in a timely manner, to secure the materials, and to make sure it's in accordance with the submitted plans. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Lal? Yeah, go on.
Chair, I know the officer's already stated that covenants are no material consideration for this committee, but just for my general knowledge, if there was, say, a covenant that precluded any wall being built on that land, who would take that on and make it not happen, sort of thing?
Yep. So that would be a civil matter. So the council wouldn't be involved in enforcing that. It would be for the management company, if there's a management company for the estate, that they would have to enforce any construction works that were against the covenant. It would be through the employment of a solicitor to follow that process.
Okay.
And if there isn't a management company, it would be those other residents who have a benefit from the covenant. They would have to take action in the High Court to have it enforced.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Williams, yeah?
Yeah, just coming back to the thing we were discussing with Councillor Chowdhury earlier. So this, I can't remember what term she used, but right of access, that there's a public right of access, or there's certainly some sort of history of it. What was it? Amenity space. I mean, there's been a load of words used to describe it, but I was interested in the response that property law and planning law can't be confused. So if I've understood you right, if permission breaks planning, if the planning permission breaks property law, the permission cannot be implemented. So has anyone actually looked into whether there's actually whether there's any covenant or anything to protecting this land to keep it unwalled and open to access? Has that piece of work been done by anyone?
These are quite common. I know I don't look it, but I've dealt with stuff like this earlier in my career, and it was quite common for there to be large areas on the side that were sort of considered as amenity land. It depends on how they were dealt with at the time. So if there was a condition that said it was amenity land, then as a matter of planning law, that's the land use that was given at the time, not curtilage. It's unhelpful because it's it looks like part of the curtilage. So that sometimes happened. I'm not sure what happens here because it's not in the papers. If there is land on the side and on the frontage, it's quite common for the property deeds, and that's where the covenant is, if you like, generally, to restrict what you can do, such as putting up fences, walls, hedges sometimes. That would have to be enforced as a matter of property law. Similarly, what was described was trespass, effectively, over a period of time, and therefore that's made it public land. Now, whether that's true or not, again, is property law and is not something you need to concern yourself with. So these are rather awkward situations to deal with. The important matters is the amenity impacts, the physical impacts on the area. And it will be quite legitimate to take the view that that open aspect was beneficial from a planning point of view, an amenity point of view, and it shouldn't be enclosed, in terms of amenity thing. But equally, you could take the view that it's an awkward thing and enclosing it isn't so harmful from an amenity point of view and resolves a rather unsatisfactory situation where it's not clear what the status of the land. So those are the sort of things you need to think about and grapple with from a sort of planning point of view.
Luki?
It's not just my ward, there are other locations, but don't we know that there are already locations in the ward where it is where land is privately owned, but is also public amenity? And people, and you look at the if you look at the registration map, or you look at the highways register, you will see that there are they're in a dark pink. So could this not be, it might not appear that way, but this is still publicly accessible but privately owned, as we see with the forecourt, for example, between number 36 and number 52 Cyan Lane, where we have enforced there in the previously. You might not find the colours on there at the moment, Eamon, but it's as we know, as we've heard, it has been used, has been open aspect and publicly used and publicly maintained for the ever since that estate was built in 1972.
Yeah, I think if members, and quite rightly, are concerned about the actual status, particularly not so much from the property law and who maintains it, because that just may have been an error. The important thing is, what is the land use status of this? So when planning permission was granted for that estate, was this a piece of amenity land, and did that planning permission properly communicate that, if you like, either in the description, in the plans, or through conditions? If members are concerned about that, then I think you need to defer it so we can bring you what we can find in the records, and so that position is crystal clear, and then you've got a clear basis upon which to make the decision.
Right. Any more questions? Yeah, no? Okay, we'll open for the debate. Oh, hang on, before that, he must come back again.
Just the building creaking, is it?
It's not going to fall, nobody.
That's just the building creaking because of the heat.
Yeah, that's what they say, I think.
So it was raining.
Just a couple of minutes, guys, while they're discussing, yeah.
That's what I suggested. So we can see what the planning status is. I'm not worried about it. Not city law status. Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, I think the question is whether members want to defer it or whether they feel they've got enough information to make a decision. Yeah.
Okay. Open for debate. Yeah. Any more? Yeah. You want to?
Well, I'd just like to ask if members are able to defer this, are they also they will also be able to refuse it, wouldn't they?
Well,
if
that, refuse it on the planning grounds.
Sorry, I can give you a few planning grounds to refuse it on if, and I'd like to move refusal on this.
That's fine, Tony. We open for debate, then we take that. Okay. Anybody want to speak? Yeah.
Chair, I think the whole thing has been sort of muddied by the fact that Hounslow Highways has seemed to, over the years and previously adopted this land, and it's become apparent to the public that it's part and parcel of open amenity land, which it clearly isn't, as we now know. And I can see from the photograph how open and pleasant it looks. But I'm also mindful of the fact that the officer has kept saying that it actually does belong to the applicant. And we talked about the covenants, and I think Councillor Unsa Chowdhury also said that she would like some sort of further negotiation. So in that sense, it may be prudent that we do defer. So we have an opportunity for negotiation, plus also officers have said they will provide further clarification on that particular legal issue sort of thing. So I would be moving defer.
Right, Councillor Lal is sort of saying for defer, and I've got a seconder for that. Well, you can do.
Councillor Barty seconded.
Councillor Luque, did you want to refuse it? That's what your proposal was, or we carry on with this first and carry on?
Well, I think I did say that, Chair, but.
Sorry, hang on.
Was that?
No, hang on, no.
Was he asking?
That's
Was he
all right,
advising you?
Just give me your advice, don't worry for that. No. Before I go for that, did you propose, sorry, I missed that, did you propose refusal, or you were asking a question? I think you were asking a question to me. That's what I took it.
And I finish it off with moving refusal. Look,
No, okay, well, to me, it looked like you were asking the question at that time. If you're going for refusal, okay, have you got a second for that?
let me,
Yeah, hang on, yeah.
okay. there
Yeah,
we
that's
go.
fine. So, Councillor Todd. Yeah, go on. Sorry. Come back to you. Yeah, yeah.
Just briefly, inappropriate further negotiations. I mean, let's move on really. And secondly, the very powerful case here is the objectors give historical evidence of the use over year after year after year. No one's challenged it. And I think at least the applicant, if we turn him down, he can appeal. I think it's a very important case as to community use and access to that land. So that's why I've endorsed Tony's recommendation.
Okay, it's been, sorry, go on.
And may I explain? And thank you, Councillor Lal, for coming up with this, because it doesn't close it with an approval. But we have had similar before, and we've had recommendations for approval, even perhaps more complex ones, like dare I say Park Road allotments, where that was open space. That was open space, and that was refused because that was open space. And I know it's again it's being appealed, but we decided as a committee to prevent that. That was also in a conservation area. This is in a conservation area. It would alter the character of a conservation area by putting a wall up. No matter how ornate it would be to compare with the 19th century Davis Estate brickworks but that is very different. Number 94 Thornbury Road. With respect to whoever wrote the report, that is looking for a reason. But when you've got another precedent down the road at Morton Avenue, where it's exactly the same, so there'd be an impact on open space. It will project beyond the flank wall, Eamon, beyond the western flank wall. Whilst it might project in front of the eastern, you've got that little space where it won't project in front of the southern wall of that property. It would still project beyond the western flank there, and it would be an impact on the amenity of the area. So if you will indulge us, and if the applicant is that keen on it, because the applicant doesn't live there, the applicant hasn't. I don't think has ever lived there, for example. Not that that is a material reason either, but it's not. It's something a little bit cheeky. If they were that keen on it, they would have put an application in 5 years ago when they were enforced previously. So if you will, it's not about indulging us. It's about doing the right thing for a neighbourhood of 42 properties, mixed properties, in the conservation area, by refusing this. If not, well, then the inspector can decide, or if not, then Councillor Lal, if he's still up for it.
So can you clarify those two reasons again, please? That's what you sort of refusing. The planning reason, yeah?
Yeah, of course, planning reasons. Impact on the character of conservation area, the Spring Grove conservation area specifically. Impact on open space, development on open space, projecting beyond the flank walls boundary space, and the impact on the amenity of the area, the long-standing amenity of the area. There are enough reasons for you. We can pick 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah, Mike, what do you think?
The only modification I would make is I think we should use the language of the open amenity, visual amenity. I think it would be dangerous to talk about public open space amenity, because you don't know that.
That's generous of you to clarify, Mike. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, are we taking any more comments before the vote, or I'm just wondering if it's free to discuss before we're voting? I guess my thoughts are, having listened to it all, it clears to me that there may well be a a route for preventing this?
Mr. William, hold on. It's been proposed and seconded now.
All right, so
We are at the moment
debate's
asking,
over.
asking the
Okay.
officers, is it good enough or can we sort of modify the reasons? That's what we're trying to do at the moment. So are you okay, Baljit?
I think Councillor William had wanted to have a discussion before the voting had started, and he felt he hasn't had the opportunity.
Is that how, I don't think it goes like that.
Because it was put that way, then it has to.
Okay, yeah, it's open for discussion. Go on.
Sorry for
Yeah, go
confusing
on.
and muddying
Go on,
the
sorry.
water.
Yeah, yeah.
It occurs to me that, so on the wall and how it looks in the planning grounds, personally, I don't see any reason, if it's private land and they own it, why you would reject on the grounds building a wall. You know, I just don't see that it contravenes in any meaningful way, and I think the officer's report reflects that. I do, however, think there is this question about whose land it is, what the rights are, what the uses are. Mike's made that clear. That's a property law issue. What I would hate is for us to approve it, then build a wall, then find out afterwards that the property law aspects actually said that shouldn't have happened, and then we spend 10 years in enforcement not getting anywhere and all the rest of it. So I guess where I would have come if had we not already moved this motion is I would have liked to have discussed options around conditions, that before anything gets built, we actually, you know, get to the bottom of what the property law, you know, status is, and that we, you know, we're in a position where that an application cannot be enforced if it is in fact in contravention of property law, and that we get that bit of work done first, and that there's some sort of, you know, condition to that effect. Because I think in planning terms, I don't see an objection to it, but I think the point is that this is a piece of land that there is a dispute over whose land it is and whether it is public land, and whether there is enough time has passed that this isn't any more longer private land. And I would like us to bottom that out. But on the planning grounds, I personally don't see any reason for rejection. I would vote to approve, but on the basis that we get that other piece of work sorted out first. So that was what I wanted to say in this debate anyway.
Okay, Councillor.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that regardless of the unclear situation on who owns the land or what the public access to the land is, my personal view is it shouldn't go ahead, because I think it in a way, when I went to see it and just visualize where the wall would be, I think it would fundamentally transform the visual nature of the estate. And I think for that reason, it's inappropriate. And so I think I'd oppose it regardless of the situation between the ownership of the land or the use of the land.
Okay, Councillor Atwal.
Hi, it might be a silly question, but just to clarify, if the wall does go up, who maintains the land then? Because at the moment it's being maintained by Hounslow Highways.
I suppose it'll be the house homeowner, but officers.
Yeah, I think I don't know the precise answer, but from the information that we've been given, the applicant has signed certificate A to say that they own all the land. Working on the basis that is correct, then it seems they've had their land maintained by Highways fortuitously. The land would be enclosed and form part of their rear garden, so therefore they would maintain it because it's private enclosed land and part of their rear garden. But where the truth is in all of that, I don't know. All I've got is the applicant has signed a certificate, which is part of the form, that says I certify that I own all the land.
Has the land been transferred already on the applicant's name, or is there any application in place in land registry?
We haven't looked at the land registry because we don't normally do that.
Okay.
Yeah, Chair, my concern is that on the way Councillor Lukey wants to proceed, we seem to be willfully egging on a appeal. And I just wanted legal advice. Knowing what we know, are we not better off deferring and taking on board what Councillor Williams has also said and getting the correct information so we can make that decision and make it solid? Or do we willfully go ahead and refuse an application where we know there are some elements where we're still unclear?
Clarify, there's three aspects to this. So there's the property law aspects that you don't actually need to concern yourselves with. I take the point that you don't want to waste time putting the fence up, but that's not your job as a local planning authority. If they want to do that, and then the neighbours want to take them to the High Court, you know, so that bit of it is not your concern. You can forget about that. There's the planning status of the land, which I'm not clear what that is. So it may be that when planning permission was granted, it was the intention for it to be amenity land. That may be part of the description. It may be on the approved plans. It may be reflected in a condition. It may have been missed, and it often was. So that's the bit I don't know, and that's the bit that you might want to think about deferring it for.
That's what I was thinking of,
Yeah,
because there
so-
are a number of issues there.
Yeah.
It would have, well, this has been proposed now, but would have been offered, would have been better to defer it, discuss it, and next time we'll.
Well, I think there's two
make a better
slightly
decision.
different planning
Yeah,
issues
yeah,
going on.
sorry.
Yeah, I just need to finish that. So that is about what is the use of the land from a planning point of view, and whether or not you want to, you know, if it has got a use as amenity land, whether you want to maintain that, and that would be something you could do if that was the planning position. The third thing is its impact on visual amenity. And if you think it has a bad impact on visual amenity and the character of the conservation area, you can refuse it on that, because that isn't dependent on those other issues. So those three issues are separate and self-contained, and you have to think about all three of them.
Yeah.
Well, I understand these. Yeah, us wanting to get everything 100% based on what knowledge we have on this, or what knowledge we don't have, and then to prevent a decision made in that way. But you know, we whether he's completed Section A, you know, I look at planning application forms at London Borough of Hounslow, and I'll send them back to officers saying someone's not completed Section A, and I know they don't own the land, for example, and they don't have an interest on the land. Here we are not looking at, and we're not looking to make it easy for anybody, particularly whether it's the landowner or an objector or similarly. We are, as I did spread it out earlier on, it's a conservation area. It's got visual amenity at the moment with a brick wall, you know, right up against the pavement. It's not going to have the same visual amenity. So these are the things that if the fella does decide to challenge it and put in an appeal, these are the things that our officers and I would be willing, and I'm sure objectors would be willing to turn up at the appeal, should there ever be one, because this is very spurious. I think we would be willing to do that, Councillor Lau. Let's not, Councillor Williams, let's not make it necessarily. We're not looking to make it easy for anybody. We're looking at what's right here. Just because it is suggested that we approve this, doesn't mean to say that we haven't found reasons as lay people that we can't refuse it. And by deferring it, you know, what will happen? We'll defer it, it'll come back, and then we'll be on the same argument again. You don't want to be visiting this again. Let's refuse it. Okay, if you don't want to vote for refusal, abstain. But I think there's enough steam here for a refusal, and let other people, if he's really that keen on it, the absentee landlord, if he's really that keen on it, he will make that appeal, and then we will argue the toss later on, because these are valid reasons for refusal. Chair and
Thank you,
colleagues.
Councillor Luki. Councillor Hinami?
If the application does get deferred, I will suggest the officers, if we can put a condition that at any stage in future, he shouldn't put an application to own the land. So that should be one of the conditions to property in terms of property law, that he wants to own the land because he's been taking care of it from last X years, amount of years. I've seen people doing that. So will that be accepted, or where there will be a condition that he will never be able to do that?
That's not a matter that the council deals with, and it's not a planning consideration, so such a condition would be unlawful. So that's a separate matter entirely.
Okay, any more debates? No? Okay, we have to take a vote on that. Now, Councillor Luki has proposed a refusal. Sorry.
The fact that it's an absentee landlord shouldn't cloud your considerations one way or another. You need to determine this on its planning merits, on whether it has an adverse impact on visual amenity in a conservation area, full stop.
Yeah, that's right. That's fine. Councillor Luki has given the reason and he's proposed the refusal. It's been seconded. Can we take a vote on that refusal, please? Put the hands up. Yes, 2. Any, sorry, 3. There's a little hand up there. Yeah. 4. Okay. Now, yeah, I'll do. No, I'm not voting for that. Carry on. I'm not against that. I'm going to, yeah, go on. You 1, 2, 3. Any more? Huh? Okay, so it's abstentions? I'm going to abstain.
So, Councillor, you left the room, so you can't vote.
Oh, you left the room for a little while. Yes, yeah, fine, yeah, fine. Yeah. Okay. You're right, no problem. Thank you. Okay, I'm looking at the time as well now. Do members need a little break or will we carry on? Yeah, go on. We'll take a 5 minutes break. Yeah. Yeah, can we, while the legal is talking to Councillor Luki, can we extend? Thank you. I think we're all in. Okay, next item is land rear of 50 Thornbury Road, Isleworth. I think Councillor Luki would like to speak on that. Is it, Councillor Luki?
Chair, this is on the agenda because, as I explained at the start of the meeting, we're on the cusp of boundary changes. It
Yeah.
would have been in your old Hounslow Central
course,
Ward. It's
yeah.
now in Hounslow. It's now in Osterley and Spring Grove Ward, and this was asked. There's a request from the Spring Grove Residents Association that it comes on this agenda. So
Yeah.
I have an open mind on this, or I've had an open mind on this. I've read the papers, and I've got a few questions to ask, and we'll. So don't.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to spend some time there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay then. Thank you very much.
Eamon, to you.
Thanks, Chair, and hi everyone. So the application being considered under this proposal is for the demolition of the existing garages at the rear of the site at 50 Thornbury Road and the erection of a detached two-storey, three-bedroom property with associated cycle parking and bin storage. As mentioned, the application has been called in for determination by Councillor Luki, and it's located in the Osterley and Spring Grove ward since the recent boundary changes. It's also located within the Spring Grove conservation area on the corner of Thornbury and Spring Grove Roads. As you can see in the pictures, these are the existing garages on the site, which are currently underutilised. So it represents a brownfield site suitable for development. The area surrounding the site compromises of a mixture of semi-detached and detached properties on modest plots. 5 responses were received in relation to this application, which are summarised as follows. The proposal would be inappropriate for the plot, the location and the line of houses on Spring Grove Road. The proposed dwelling would overlook block light and outlook for neighbouring properties. There is no room for additional homes behind any properties on this section of Thornbury Road. The application site is fundamentally unsuitable for residential development. Harm to pedestrian and vehicular safety. Applicant has failed to demonstrate proposal complies with all requirements of the local plan, and the proposed access would be unsuitable. Several amendments were sought during the course of this application, the main one which was to remove the off-street parking from the proposal, as it would have caused, due to the location close to the bus stop, there would have been serious harm to pedestrian and highway safety. The application is recommended for approval by officers. It represents a development which is acceptable in principle, utilising a small brownfield site within a sustainable location for development. It is a high-quality form of design which would preserve and enhance the character of the Spring Grove conservation area and would not be out of keeping with surrounding properties. The proposed dwelling is not considered to harm neighbours' living conditions. It's sufficiently separated from the properties number 48 and 50 Thornbury Road, and due to its positioning, it would not result in overlooking or loss of outlook to the occupiers of number 209 Spring Grove Road. The dwelling would have a gross internal floor area of 136.7 square metres, complying with the nationally described space standards, and would provide policy compliant 82.8 square metres of private amenity space. It would, as mentioned before, it would be car-free development, and it's not considered, given the size of development, it's not considered it would result in excessive parking stress, and bin and cycle storage would both be provided in accordance with the policy. There's a 67.45% reduction proposed over baseline emission, and the proposal includes solar panels and heat pumps. So as I said before, it's recommended for approval by officers.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophie. Question from members? Yeah, Councillor Alpost.
Well, Chair, it's a question regarding the garages. Who do they belong to? And have there been any reports of antisocial behaviour and the like at that site?
So the site is in ownership of the applicant. They bought the Backland garages as a potential development site, and as I mentioned in the officer's report, there's been no reports of antisocial behaviour, and the garages currently aren't in use as car parking, so it's not considered that they would result in, obviously, by demolition, any excess parking stress within the surrounding area.
Thank you. Yeah.
I recommend this for approval. There are no possible reasons to object.
Okay, can I
It's
just
almost an abuse of the calling system with respect.
Okay, thank you. It's been proposed for approval. Somebody seconding that? No, hang on. We'll carry on debate. We'll carry on the debate. Okay, somebody.
Okay.
Councillor Luki, hold on a second. It's been proposed, seconded. Now we're still debating it. Carry on. You can ask your question.
Chair, we weren't debating it. We were asking questions of officers, and then you move whatever you want to move, Councillor Todd. And then, yeah. I think you're indulging Councillor Todd, Chair, but you're not indulging me. I'm sorry.
Councillors, please.
Next time we see something in
Okay.
George Ward, I'll move it immediately.
Hang on a minute. Okay, Councillor Luki, you carry on. Ask your question quickly.
Of course. Well, tell me. Thank you, Sophie. Tell me. I've got at least I've got 4 questions actually. If that's all right with you, Councillor Todd. What's the difference between this application and the previous application for the site that was refused?
Yeah. So the previous application had off-street parking. So the first reason for refusal in relation to the first application was the provision of off-street parking, which obviously due to the location of the bus stop and the inability to achieve the required visibility displays, was refused on that basis, and it was also refused on a design basis. So the scheme proposed in this scheme is considerably different to what was proposed in the other scheme, which often had large windows floating onto Spring Grove. If you want me to find a plan, I can show you a plan of the previous scheme if that would help.
No, that's okay. I know that one, unless Councillor Todd wants to see it. But the next
Can we not do that, please?
Sorry,
Just ask the question.
no, that's all right. Okay, all right. So tell us about the got the bats in here. Tell us about the access from Spring Grove Road. How there'll be no vehicular access from this site to Spring Grove Road.
Yes, that's correct.
And so what will the impact? There'll be no impact on the bus stop from any vehicles coming out.
No, so
that
there's
was raised by residents.
Yes, so that point was noted earlier on in the application, and we did agree with the agent. So off-street parking has been removed. So the area which it was supposed to be off-street parking has now been dedicated as a private amenity space for the dwelling.
Okay. And earlier on today, I was copied into an email to you from another residents' association. He mentions supplementary planning guidance that all main entrances to houses must be clearly visible, clearly identifiable, and directly accessible from the public realm. What's your response to that from our old friend Mr. Marbrow?
Yeah, so as you can see if you go towards the ground floor plan, again, the access has also been amended during the course of the application. Access was originally kind of from the rear of the site, but it's been amended during the course of the application to come towards from the front. So as you can see, although the entrance is clearly accessible although directly off Spring Grove Road, from the point there's an entrance gate, which is clearly visible from the wider public realm. It won't be obviously if you go back to the photos of the site. Sorry. You can kind of see that point where the bushes are is going to be where the entrance is, so it will clearly be visible from the public realm.
Okay, thank you, Sophie.
Yep. Any more questions from members? Quickly for debate, everybody. Yeah. Okay.
No, Chair. Just to quickly say, I sympathise with Councillor Todd on this one. In sort of national, regional, and local planning terms, this looks like a no-brainer in terms of we're replacing garages with a house. People often say we don't build enough detached multi-bedroom houses, and that's what we have here. We have a motion to approve. We have a seconder. I really do think we should just get this one.
Thank you,
done.
Councillor Williams. Yes, we have a proposal and a seconder. Can we take a vote for the approval, please? Yeah. Okay. Against? Abstentions? Well, just fine. I have to carry on. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, can I just say, this is why we have a planning committee. People can refer items. This is for new members of the planning committee. People can refer ask for a call in, and that's what we did just now. Okay, and then that's
Yeah.
that's part of the democratic process.
Thank you,
They might-
Tony.
that-
Yes,
that's-
they've been
that's
told,
it,
they've been told
really.
in that training. I think everybody attended the training, yes?
Would you mind
Go on.
respond to that? Yeah. It is not like a question time. You've got to normally have planning reasons to bring it forward. You're changing the route. 95% of planning applications are approved by officers. So when you see a call in, you're looking very constructive matters where the officers may have slipped, which they never do. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, go to the next item. Thank you. It's been approved. Item number 8 is 9698 High Street, Hounslow, pages 57 to 73. The officer.
Hi again. So I just wanted to verbally update the committee on two things regarding this application. In hindsight, condition 1 is not necessary for the development as it has already been started, and therefore the timeframe condition would not be needed. We would simply be securing the points such as cycle parking and bin storage prior to occupation, as the building is not yet occupied. And also in paragraph 10.4 of the officer's report, it should say paid on completion rather than the phrasing that was used in the report, which is a slight typo. I apologize for that. And so to move on to the scheme, the proposal being considered under this application is a retrospective application for the use of a building with a commercial unit on the ground floor and 8 self-contained flats above. The submission has been necessitated. This is being made after the building was previously received planning permission in 2015. However, a failure to discharge a pre-commencement condition in relation to materials mean the permission is invalid. And this application is presented at Planning Committee due to a requirement for a Section 106 agreement to be negotiated to secure a carbon offset payment. The site is located on the northern side of Hounslow High Street and contains a 5-storey building, which is the subject of this application, and a service yard to the rear. It lies within the Hounslow Town Centre metropolitan area and is designated a secondary shopping frontage. No responses from the public or consultees were received for this application. The development is acceptable in principle. It's the same design and appearance as was proposed in the previous application approved in 2015. The material palette would be acceptable and there would be no harm to the living conditions of neighbouring properties. The proposal would be car-free and includes 18 cycle parking spaces, which will be secured by condition, along with details of the waste storage, which is also considered acceptable. The development achieves a 47% reduction in carbon emissions, which, given the limited scope and the retrospective nature of development, is considered acceptable and has been confirmed this by the council's energy consultant. The fabric specifications are considered better than baseline, and the proposal would incorporate solar panels to comply with the B Green energy hierarchy. The carbon offset payment required would be £11,896, and this would be secured by the Section 106 agreement.
Thank you, Sophie. Question from members? Yep. Anybody? No? Oh, let you off very lightly. Okay, open for debate. Anybody? Anybody going to propose something then? Yep. Councillor Meir?
Propose approval.
Okay, seconding? Councillor John Todd? Okay. Vote for approval, please. Any absence? No? Abstentions? That's it. I think it's unanimous again.
I think so.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Okay, next item is item 942 Avenue Road, Brentford, pages 74 to 82. And who's taking it? Sophie again? Or no,
Hi.
carry on.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
So the application site is a 2-story semi-detached dwelling on Avenue Road. The application is being heard at committee because the applicant is a former councillor and at the time of the application was a sitting councillor. If you can move on to the photos, yep. So you can see 2-story semi-detached. There are a number of extensions within this area, including single-story rears and rear dormers and front dormers as well. So the proposal is for a rear roof extension, incorporating a rear roof dormer and 2 rear windows. There we go. There's the rear elevations existing and proposed. No representations have been received on this application. The proposal is considered acceptable in principle and would not result in harm to neighbor conditions, giving to the living conditions of neighbors, giving its proposed scale and positioning. It is not considered to result in harm to the character and appearance of the area, as it would match the design of the neighboring extension at 41A, and it would be a modest extension that would be subservient to the host dwelling. And if anyone has any questions, I'll hand it back over to the chair.
Thank you. Questions for the
Chair,
officer? Yeah.
move
Councillor
approval.
William? Hang on. Yeah. Any questions first? No, we do. But last time you were objected to that when we took that. Anyway, very quickly. Any questions now? Yeah, go on. Councillor Todd? Yeah, that's been approved, done already. Okay. We got the recommendation from the seconding it, are you? Okay. Votes for the approval. Well, don't look at me. You're the only one left there. Okay. Against? Abstention? That's one abstention. Thank you. It's been approved. Okay. Very good. 10 is fine. Number 11. Any other business? I have not been informed. Councillor Luki, I'm still talking. Okay. Any other business? I have not been informed of any. The next meeting will be on 30th of June. And with that, the meeting is closed. Thank you for your help. And thank you, officers, of course.